Glad to have you back. You're still watching Daybreak. Let's dive in straight to look at what the papers are saying on their front pages. And we have Dr. Constance Ikoko here with us in the studio again.
Yes, good morning again. To look at the headlines today, we have Chuks Akonna, who is the Executive Director of Authority newspaper. Great to have you here, Chuks.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you very much for having me.
Hello there and welcome to the program. We'll begin with This Day newspaper. In This Day, Ganduje Grace Okwewolo says APC will recover more states. And then Dangote, NNPC made huge mistake by reducing stake in our refinery from 20 to 7.2%. CSOs, Edo Guber results altered lacks legitimacy, PDP heads to court. While calls are mounting for INEC to review the results from Edo State, Peter Obi calls it an election, a mockery of democracy. The main thrust of this article is that civil society organizations claim results from several polling units were altered at collation centers and therefore need to be re-examined. Chuks, let's start with you. Do you see that happening, the review that you're talking about under the Independent National Electoral Commission of Professor Mahmoud Yakubu? Do you see that happening?
Yeah, your guess, I guess, is good as mine. We have to go back to history to see if such a review has ever been in Nigeria. You know, even during the last general elections, we had all the complaints, you know, and the response from the party that won was go to court. I think Edo State is a very, very embarrassing situation because it's the first off-cycle election since President Bola Ahmed Tinubu took over office. And, you know, there are telltale signs, you know, there were the warning signals before the election, you know, when a certain the REC in Edo State was accused of being a card-carrying member of Edo State, of the ruling APC at the federal level. I have thought that the least the INEC should have done was to have at least brought in somebody, you know, with a less tainted credential. But as it were, as soon as, even during the elections, we saw what several observers pointed out, you know, where all the mistakes were made in favor of the ruling APC, you know, and the optics weren't nice. And I'm not surprised that CSOs, observers, and of course, the parties that are said to have lost, the PDP and the APC and the Labour Party, are calling for a review of the election.
Well, we've seen this happen time again and again, and at this point, it looks like it's a complicated, difficult situation. Will we see anything ever different, Ndi?
One, it's such a pity that every time elections are held, there are hues and cries there from the losing side, you know, and then concerning INEC, and then concerning vote buying and the lot. You know, the election observers, YAGAs, CSOs have said that the votings were altered at polling units, you know, and that it lacks, YAGA says it lacks integrity, and then the CSO says there should be a review. So apparently one thing stands clear, that it was not perfect anyway. No human whatever can be perfect, but at least if you get 80, 60%, 80, 90%, you can say, okay, margin of error. Where do we go from here is the question,
right? You
know, in the way we conduct our elections.
That's a big question. Let's look at the Guardian newspaper. Amid law impacts, over 174,100 new NGOs established in 4 years. Then FEC OK's plan to strengthen national value system in schools. Anger Nigeria demands Security Council seat. Nigerians spend 1.4 trillion on epileptic power. Discos owed 385 billion naira. Then, after Edo, APC vows to clinch Ondo, Anambra, and Rivers. The party's chairman, Alhaji Umaru Ganduje, said that he has to make sure that the APC wins also the Southeast region. He said that in order to demarginalize the Southeast region, they have to become APC. That's his own way of making sure there's no longer marginalization. Mind you, Alhaji Umar Ganduje is facing a corruption case in his home state of Kano. He is the one running around as the chairman of the party.
Well, they have struck out the case in court.
There are several cases out there against him. Okay. Anyway, let's talk about these chooks. What are your thoughts on this particular story? The APC says that all the states have to become APC, or they have to win the elections.
I don't think Alhaji Umar Ganduje understands the meaning of multi-party democracy. You know, in democracy, multi-party system in democracy. There's nowhere in the world, if you allow one party to become, winner carries all. It's going to portend very grave danger for democracy. And there's also this issue of this talk about preacher, practice what you preach. Umar Ganduje, who is the national chairman of APC, is a man without a constituency because he lost his home state, Kano State, to a newly formed NNPP. So I thought that Ganduje ought to have started, leading by example by making sure that APC wins in Kano State. Then we can now talk about replicating his feat in other parts of the country. He shouldn't take credit for what happened in Edo State. He had nothing to do with Edo State. In fact, in my opinion, many people consider him a liability to the party because, to begin with, the seat of national chairman of the APC is zoned to the North Central zone, and they have been hue and cry by the zone to produce the national chairman of the party.
Well, Nkechi, when you think about what the APC is trying to do, the Edo elections, as we all seen, everyone has said, or some have said, that it fell short. What does this portend for other elections in the country?
It's just a symptomatic issue that shows the wider issue when it comes to Nigeria, when it comes to elections, and looking forward to Anambra, Ondo State.
Yes.
I think one of the bigger issues we need to look at is that trust deficit between voters and INEC. When you have that distrust, when you have people who feel like, look, my vote is not going to count, they just don't come out. And that's where the issue starts. When you have low voter turnout. In Edo State, I remember when they were doing PVC collection, the people that collected PVC, the numbers were high. And then you have 22%, I think, people coming out to vote. So we need to tackle that foundational issue, and then you can now move on to what happens actually in the process of the election. And the CSOs, I'd just like to commend them because the CSOs leading with Yaga Africa had this really robust system. I think they had up to 300 observers on ground in Edo State. Their process was called Process and Results Verification for Transparency, just to monitor and observe these elections. And when they bring out their reports, I think it's important for us to actually take a look at where these mistakes have been done, and for INEC and other agencies to then improve going forward to all the elections that we're going to witness in the next coming months.
Quickly, Constance, before you go on, just briefly. The language of Ganduje is troubling. He says, we will stop at nothing, How about we will do everything that is legally possible to win those states? When you say you will stop at nothing, it reeks of you can do anything to win elections. That's for me.
Right. Nkechi, your last word was we need to improve.
Exactly.
That's a big word. We're waiting for that improvement. Let's look at Daily Trust. Ombudsman asks Daily Trust to apologize. The National Media Complaints Commission has released the report of its investigation in a complaint made against Daily Trust in the Samoa Agreement article. It says, while there's interest in the article, there were inaccuracies relating to LGBTQ provisions. The story had suggested that the agreement had these provisions, which it says was not true. It asked the paper to issue an apology both in print and the online editions. The report did admit, though, that earlier drafts had these clauses of LGBTQ, but in the final version, it was excluded. Well, I guess we may be seeing an apology from Daily Trust or not, Chooks.
Just has led the way by running the story as their lead today. I think that's the first step. It shows that, it's very commendable that Daily Trust has taken that bold lead, to have run that story as a lead today when there are several stories, particular stories from Edo State. So it shows Daily Trust's commitment to fairness, to the truth. Daily Trust over the years has proven to be a very, very reliable newspaper, news medium. And but also in the report, we also see that there were knocks for the federal government, that you do not, the lack of the secrecy in government activities. Because, even with the passage of the Freedom of Information Act, sometimes when you request information from government agencies, they are either slow or not, or very, very reluctant to provide such answers. I imagine that had the federal government been more open in the signing of the agreement, in carrying Nigerians along, Daily Trust wouldn't have made such errors. To err, they say it's human, and then to forgive is divine. So it's only God who doesn't make mistakes. There's nobody on earth who doesn't make mistakes, either as reporters or as a news medium. And I'm very happy that Daily Trust has led the way. They put that story as their lead to show that they are actually fallible.
I mean, this is also a signal to other papers, in terms of accuracy and making sure that you cross-check your facts before you publish it. Let's look at the Punch. In the Punch, Pro-Fubara LG Caretaker Committee Chairman dump PDP for APP. Ahead of the October 5 local government election in Rivers State, some of the Caretaker Committee chairmen have decided to leave the PDP. Almost all the candidates vying for the chairmanship and councillorship position are doing so under the platform of a different party. What does this mean for Governor Fubara Chooks?
Well, for now, not much, because they say the end, they say, justifies the means. It's very clear that Wike has taken over the PDP structure in Rivers State, and you cannot expect a man to fold his arms as someone like Fubara to fold his arms and not allow his candidates emerge. Don't forget that there's no room for independent candidacy in Nigerian elections, so you must belong to a political party. And I think what Fubara did was the best option in the present circumstance. And I also see him defecting before the next general election, the next governorship election in Rivers State. Because, you can't, like I said, a man cannot become partyless in Nigeria. So he has to, having tried all within his powers, that the PDP national leadership is not listening to him, the best option was to go to APP. And I think it's a very, very big win for the APP. Since 1999, I think 2003, when APP went into merger with other parties to form the ANPP, the party had literally gone to sleep. So as things stand, I think it's a resuscitation, it's a revival for the hitherto moribund APP.
Do you think this will make any difference?
How do they say it? In politics, one day is very long or something like that. All the chairmen, even their posters are reflecting APP. They're contesting this coming not this Saturday, the upper Saturday, 5th October 2024. They are already contesting under the platform of APP, even though Fubara told the PDP that, look, I'm still a PDP member, I'm not going anywhere. But like I said, a day is very long, and there's still so much time. I think it's 4 years or so, less than 4 years. So we watch and see what happens. But this shows the trouble in the camp of PDP, which is supposed to be the leading opposition party in the country. And
Mr. Alhaji Umar Damagu was there berating others for threatening democracy. Okay.
Damagu
it has to start. It has to start from inside. Well, let's look at the top stories in the international media today. We'll start with Daily Graphic from Ghana. Towards a good parliamentary democracy, hybrid system won't work, Justice Dorsey asserts. So the retired Chief Justice of the Supreme Court says that, Ghanaians have to choose between a pure presidential system with ministers appointed outside from the parliament, or a parliamentary system where all ministers come from the parliament, according to him, a system where members of parliament can serve both the executive and the legislative arms of government at the same time will not work for the country. I mean, this is the bane of African politics, figuring out a political system that suits the peculiarities and historical antecedents of the continent. You have a lot of countries practicing Western-style democracy, which at this time, a point in time, has not particularly delivered the kind of results that people expect. And yet we're still talking about copying other systems. So the point here is people are expecting, you know, some kind of original political system. And if you do not solve those political struggles, it's impossible to have peace that would then usher a stable system for you to grow economically. Chokes.
I think it was former President Olusegun Obasanjo who at some point said that Western democracy is not working in Africa. Let me give us an example. Even as we speak, in our federal cabinet, there are 2 or 3 persons who are elected lawmakers. You know, imagine taxpayers spend so much money to elect a lawmaker. After the elections, you know, the following day he gets nominated into the cabinet and becomes a federal minister. So, you know, we have to now, the seat has to be declared vacant and then fresh elections have to be conducted. And I think that was what Justice Dose was talking about, a retired CGN of Ghana, that if we want to practice parliamentary system of government, let's do that. If we want a presidential system of government, let's do that. The issue of allowing taxpayers spend so much money, you know, people get elected into parliament, then the following day, you nominate them ministers. So it creates, I mean, it augur well for democracy in Ghana. And I think it's the same problem in Nigeria, because look at what happened in Ebonyi State, where Dave Umahi, after so much struggles, after so much efforts, so much money put into planning of elections in Ebonyi State, he emerged senator-elect. And then he went to the Senate, was sworn in, and a few days later, you know, he accepted the ministerial appointment. It also happened in Plateau State, where Lalong didn't win elections, but by stroke of the pen of the appeal court judges, he became Senator of the Federal Republic. And as we speak, I think Plateau South, as we speak, has no senator. So these are some of the issues that of concern to Justice Dose. And I think it applies not only in Ghana, it also applies to Nigeria, West Africa.
Okay, let's look at the Guardian UK. It's still on the Israeli war. Israeli airstrikes kill at least 350 in Lebanon as fears of escalation grows. I mean, surely and gradually, it seems another theater of war is being opened between Israel and Lebanon, and Israel has gone, you know, all the way out, you know, targeting Hezbollah leaders. Some of them have been killed. And then finally, we look at the Times. Germany and France want post-Brexit migrant deal. The 2 biggest countries or economies in the European Union and the leaders as well are eager to knock out a deal with the UK regarding migrants. They're trying to work out legal mobility for migrants into Britain in return for helping to strengthen or to stop irregular channel crossings in small boats. Now, the point here is that Brexit has had consequences for these migration policies, and they're trying to handle that. Migration is one of the biggest items in Europe, especially during elections, Nkechi.
Yes, and interestingly, you have the German and French ministers basically highlighting that the current lack of legal pathways is now bolstering that smuggling networks that they are seeking to dismantle. And obviously, we have the criminalization of desperate migrants, only leading to those crossings,
and asylum seekers, you know.
And asylum seekers as well. But this also increases death toll, and it's just a classic case of creating a problem through sort of misguided policy while attempting to then solve it with enforcement. So take, for instance, the assertion that almost a third of illegal entries into Schengen areas now originates from the UK even. And so this statistics just shows they need that comprehensive migration framework throughout the whole of Europe and the UK, of course.
And you have the last word. The Italian Prime Minister has been trying to have deals, some European government with northern African countries from where you also have these boats crossing the Mediterranean. But the European Union also has to look look at is decade-long policies, exploitation, meddlesomeness, interference in African countries, because we do not talk about this much, but it's part of the problem that we are facing.
Yeah, the German Interior Minister, Nancy Faeser, and his French counterpart, or her French counterpart rather, from editorials available or letters available, you know, Germany is saying that Brexit has done a lot of damage. The impact on migration policy. So EC should step in and try to do what is a balancing act, what is a reorganization to see that things begin to work on the question of migration and asylum seekers. Thank you so much, Dr. Constance Ikoku, for being here. And of course, Chuks Akuna, or ED Authority newspaper, for waking up this early to come join us
It is early.
Daybreak. I am Ndi Amugo, thanking you for watching. Next on our bill is the morning show, and as you know, every day indeed does matter here on Arise News. Thanks for watching.
I'm in kitchen now.